Hang on.
Okay.
Wait. I just want to be 100% sure it works this time.
Yes, please.
There we go. Okay, you're good to go.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. So I call this meeting to order at 7:05 p.m., 11:30. That is November 30th, 2023. Okay, I'm going to start this meeting off with roll call. So is member Eileen Leahy present?
Yes, present.
Thanks, Eileen. Is member Debbie Yassick present? Yes.
Here.
Hey, Debbie and myself, Chair Kiara Smith Brown. Thank you. Is there before, I know there's no comments submitted. Before we
Right.
get
Yeah, we
I was going to
actually
say, is
have,
there a motion to change to change
yeah,
the
we
agenda?
have to change the agenda.
Mhm.
So there's two items that Regina asked me to add. So I'm going to make a motion to amend the agenda to include review of the resolution that delegates the authority for administering elections to the county.
Okay.
And then the second is for discussions about meetings in 2024.
Okay. If everyone's okay with that, is it all right if we vote on both of those together?
I believe so.
Okay,
That's
just
the
making sure you
motion,
all are
so.
okay with it. Okay, so the motion, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So we are going to add that to the agenda. Eileen, just to be specific, was there any place that you would like to have that in the agenda? Because there's many pieces.
It doesn't, we could probably do the resolution now if you want, and then save the meeting for the end. How's that sound?
Absolutely. Okay. After the approval of the minutes, we can do that resolution. Okay. Is there a motion then to approve of the minutes? These are minutes from our meeting on Thursday, October 19, 2023.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of October 19th, 2023.
Okay, I'll second.
Thanks. All in favor of that? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Eileen, I take that as an aye. So now we're going to go on to this resolution. Thank you so much for doing the work on this, Ashley and Eileen, for supporting especially. Let's go through it now. Would you all, I can present it, but if you all just want to talk about it, we can as well.
Okay, Ashley, are you back on the call?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm taking notes.
All right. Well, Ashley, do you want to explain the resolution, or do you want me to go over
Great,
it?
you can, Ashley.
Yes, so this is a resolution we've been doing for several election cycles now. Under our city laws, in order for us to essentially hire Anne Arundel County, City Council has to approve that. So we put this resolution up there to get City Council approval for you guys, for the board, essentially, to hire Anne Arundel County to assist with the elections and to move forward with that process. And we also include language to allow, and Elaine might have to help me with that, the mail-in voting option as well.
Oh, yes.
Right. So in the last election, 2017, we included for vote by mail, which was done early on, really in the COVID, during the COVID pandemic, and was put in just in case we needed to make a change. Since then, the state of Maryland has now done away with absentee ballots and have replaced it with mail-in voting, which David discussed with us at our last meeting. So the resolution has been amended to, and actually, Ashley, it's Cynthia didn't get the final correction back to me, but I did it. I did it and sent it out later. So I'm looking at down below where it says the city of Annapolis is authorized to contract with the county, and then B is provide for mail-in voting as mutually agreed upon by the city of Annapolis Board of Supervisors of Elections and Anne Arundel County Board of Elections. I thought it was worthwhile to conclude that in there because that's what they're doing. And this doesn't mean we're definitely doing it. It just gives us the option to do it as part of the resolution in negotiating with them. And we can talk about mail-in voting later in our discussion about election code. One of the criticisms in 2017 that was rendered, or I'm sorry, 2021 was that mail-in or vote by mail was done with a resolution and not through codifying it. So we're probably, we're going to discuss codifying it, but at least it's here if we want that option. And again, I think it will also help in terms of moving forth the MOU. So I think the rest of it is pretty much the same.
Yes. Well, I would say I love this. First off, I'm glad that we're doing this now and to be a part of this process. Debbie, did you have any thoughts or feedback before? I think, if it's all right, I say we just move that we support this draft resolution and ask Ashley for your support if we can get this on the agenda of the city council so that this can get passed.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty open-ended and general. I agree with Eileen, the ballots should come out and just say mail-in voting. And if this is what's been done already for, three, past several elections, and the main clarification is mail-in versus absentee, trying to get people to switch over those words. I don't have anything else at this time to offer for this resolution.
The other thing the resolution does is it sets the dates.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sets the dates of the election. So the primary will be September 16th, 2025, and the general election will be November 4th, 2025. So that's the other piece of this, is that setting the actual dates. I believe it is on, if we pass it tonight, it will be on the December 11th City Council agenda.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm glad that you also specified about the mail-in ballot option, as it had been in previous legislation. At least it allows for us the ability and the flexibility to, if we do get the support of changing the code to allow for this, it gives us that just in case. So I do love it. So if there are no more questions or anything, let's go ahead. If there's a motion to support, or at least ask Ashley to move on this and present this to the city council at the December 11th or the next meeting, if possible. So is there a motion for that?
I move that we accept the resolution as presented to us this evening. I guess that's it.
Okay, second on that?
Second.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Debbie. All in favor? I
Aye.
do.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ashley, please. And Regina, when she's able to hear this too.
Yeah, I'll send it over to our legislative analyst tomorrow morning.
Right. I mean, I think it's really, Cynthia is the new legislative analyst. So she worked on it, and she's going to be working on a few other things that we can talk about tonight.
Okay. Well, moving forward then on the agenda, we do have the update on the task force to study the city municipal elections final report. What's going on?
Well, can you take down the?
Oh, absolutely. That's being stuffed.
Yeah, that's okay. It's still, I mean, I think all it's waiting for is the executive summary to be added to it. So I can't really say much more than that. If you want, I can read off to you the 11 recommendations that are made in the report, because they were discussed at their last public meeting. If you want me to do that.
Sure, just for the information, I think.
I think we've covered most of them. One is to adopt state law by reference in regards to elections. Notwithstanding the adoption of state law, the Board of Supervisors of Elections should determine whether Annapolis should maintain lower campaign contribution limits. 3 is transition from a party nominating primary system to a blanket primary system. So that's a system where it would be a type of open primary where non-affiliated could also vote. When adopting a new system, consider whether a candidate's party affiliation can and should be listed. So again, it's making recommendations saying consider these things, but not necessarily saying do it one way or the other. Move to a statewide cycle so that the state and county boards can manage more of the election process. The city should leverage the savings generated by moving to a statewide election cycle to fund a public campaign financing program. The Board of Supervisors of Elections should be expanded and unaffiliated voters should be allowed to serve. The Board of Supervisors of Elections should draft regulations clarifying the process for placing questions on the ballot. The City Council should be limited to 3 4-year terms. Number 10 is the Board of Supervisors of Elections should research the best practices for having the highest practical accuracy in voter rolls. And then 11, the city should not universally mail out ballots in non-emergency situations. So those are the things that were discussed in the last open meeting. And the report will be giving, more research and discussion on each of those. So we've already started, that this board has already started working on a number of them already. So we'll wait and see.
All right. Any questions there before I move forward? Thanks for all the work. I know it's been some time. I know that's probably what you're going to say, Debbie, though I do understand.
Yeah, I just don't want this to get cold. I said this last month, they met diligently in a small time frame every other week. They did their part. They submitted a report. Now I'm disappointed in them because they finished mid-September and now we are mid-December and we don't have their report from all the work that they did and basically said at their last meeting all these things. I thought for sure we'd have it last month and then again for sure this month because we know how long it takes council to act, between their schedule and adding in new things. So I just, I don't know, I just want to move on it.
Right, but we already are moving on it. So it's not a cold document. We're already moving on a number of these.
But who's writing the executive summary? The committee or staff? The task force? Yeah, is the task force writing the executive summary?
The task force is writing the report.
I thought somebody was reviewing it or they had to check things. I thought somebody at City Hall was involved as well.
No, it's a report that's coming from the task force and then it'll be submitted to us and submitted to the
I don't understand what's taking them so long. Yeah.
Well, we'll just, at this point, there's not really much we can do. And thanks for sharing the thoughts and prayerfully everything will get in time.
But again, I want to emphasize that this isn't, we have these recommendations. We are moving forward on a number of them. Some of them are mutually exclusive too. And so that's going to take some understanding. So for instance, if we go to a nonpartisan system, expanding the Board of Elections is a moot point because you probably won't have a Board of Elections separate from the county. So these are some of the decisions that really won't get decided sooner rather than later, but certainly clarifying placing questions on the ballot, the mail-in, the ballots, and a number of these things. Those are two big things. And again, that's piggybacking on the Charter Revision Commission, which 2 of these really goes to ballot questions, which is nonpartisan, and also the cycling. So we'll go from there. So it gives us a chance to get some of the preliminary work done so that there'll be some good next steps taken.
Okay.
So I'm sure everyone will just look out. Well, thank you. Let's move forward into the task force as well, all out of love. No, harsh feelings or anything. We just appreciate your work, though we do urge with the time. So we have the amended campaign fund reports. Hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to look at that. I have. So we can go through them, or if you want to take a look, we just make some comments. I know Regina has shared that she will be sending this out upon our confirmation tonight to the campaigns. And right now, if we want to go through them, we do have here. Yeah. Was there a comment? Oh, okay.
But I can go through it if you want, because I reviewed them.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. You can go through it.
Ross Arnett submitted his, but it still needs, his Schedule 2 is compliant, but he still needs a Schedule 3 to be updated and a summary sheet. So that's still out there. Friends of Fred Paone. I met with his treasurer, Randy Landis, yesterday to assist him with finishing it. So on my first review, it appears that it's going to be compliant, but it hasn't been submitted yet. But that should be fine. That was really a pretty, just including addresses and then putting had to put in the late fee, because the late fee was reimbursed to the campaign. Eleanor Tierney, at our last meeting, she also submitted a report. The missing pages were submitted. There was, I don't think that went out to everybody. I had to look it up. We had said that we didn't consider the lunches with constituents and a gift to a public figure to be related to a campaign. And that those disbursements should be returned to the campaign. She did submit a justification. I don't know. I guess Regina sent it to me. I don't know. I remember seeing it, but I'll have to send it out to you all. It's too bad we don't have it right now. The only change I noticed on the report was there were 29 entries labeled lunch with a constituent. 12 of the above noted entries were deleted on the amended report. And they were all restaurants I just happened to notice located out of Ward 1, but that left 17 lunch with constituent entries still in the report, and it also left the gift to St. John's College president in the report. So my comment had been, when entries are deleted from an amended report, an explanation needs to be given and the return of the funds. So they may have been taken out, but there was no indication that they had been returned to the campaign. Ashley, I think you saw the explanation. Do you have it handy by any chance?
I can try and look at my emails real quick. Hold on.
If you could, because there wasn't. So, we could look at that and then decide, as far as guidance. Lynn Folks, who is the treasurer for Alderman Tierney, did contact Regina, who asked me to follow up to go over the report with, it's Lyle. And she's going to give me a call next week at her convenience. So I'm happy to review it with you, but I think at the last meeting, we were pretty firm feeling that these were not campaign expenses, but it is worthy that we should hear what her defense for them is. While Ashley finds that, I can go ahead and do the others real quick. Brooks for Annapolis did submit an amended report, which did include the PAC documentation that we requested, but Schedule 2 is not updated and Schedule 3 was not updated. So those need to be submitted. Friends of Gavin Buckley did submit an amended report. The big thing that was in question was a reimbursement due to a credit card error. I spoke to his treasurer, Stuart Cohen, who said that they couldn't find out what they couldn't find out what it was due to, so they wanted to transfer it over to be a contribution. which it could be, but unfortunately on the amended report, he whited things out. And you can't white things out. So it needs to be redone again. It needs to be resubmitted with an explanation included in the report. You can't just white it out and pretend it wasn't there because it was in the previous one.
Ashley,
And also there's an error on the totals.
Ashley, did you want to share something?
I think I found the email.
Okay.
Eileen.
So let me finish. So 1 second, Ashley, if I can. So
Mhm.
Friends of Gavin Buckley, that's the other one. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 amended reports need to be re-amended. So back to Alderman Tierney.
Oh, I thought
Okay,
I had it.
Ashley.
Oh. Okay. So I thought, it's, oh, hold on. No, give me a second. Keep going. I thought I found it, but now I can't find it.
So I have a question.
Yes.
These reports, came in for their annual report, July 1, and we reviewed them initially,
Correct.
sent them out. They came back, and this is the second round, right? Second go round.
Right.
And so they're going to get, these 5 left are going to get another letter in given time. And then I guess we'll be looking at them either in December or January. And then, as Keanu and I are learning, then it's time almost, to start the next round. It just seems like these, we didn't know, Eileen, that these never go away.
Right. Well, when we get down to the part about proposed legislation, we can discuss it because we have talked about changing the enforcement and the penalties.
Yeah, and cleaning up. I mean, yeah, definitely cleaning up the repeat, the items that repeatedly get messed up. Maybe there's a way we can, phrase it better, or I don't know, something to try to get
Right. Well,
lessen these mistakes.
Right. Okay, I found it, Ashley. Says attached to this memo is a corrected Schedule 3. The schedule reflects a reduced number and reassignment of those payments under our reexamination of those charges. So she's referring to the lunches. She is now changing those lunches to a code F, which is fundraising.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Are you?
So I'll just read verbatim what this says. Lunches for fundraising and the expansion of constituency rather than typical automatic business, or a strategic approach to connect with new residents and lay the groundwork for re-election. The campaign's Coffee with Your Alderwoman branding exemplified a commitment to outreach and community engagement. In evolving Ward 1, these gatherings fostered relationships and provided an opportunity to understand constituents' needs, ultimately providing funds and a position for a successful re-election campaign. We believe this addresses the open comments made by the reviewer, as those not mentioned above were addressed in an email exchange between myself and the city clerk on 9/28/2023. Please accept this memo and the attachments as supplements to the previous report.
Okay. And we kind of touched on that too, that if it was coming from that and there's perspective of preparing for the next election, it kind of would be acceptable, though. Why is that done as a response versus it being initial? I think that's where much of the question may be coming from. So any feels on it? Because of course we're going to have to make sure that we all agree on this, which I do for the most part with this this updated campaign fund report analysis. So for Ellie, or excuse me, friends.
Well, we're focusing
North Tierney.
We're focusing just on Alderman Tierney at this point.
Exactly.
I guess my concern is the consistent use of constituent, which to me is aldermanic. That if you're meeting with constituents as your alderman, it's part of your alderman. That's how I read it. To me, fundraising is usually involved with some sort of group activity, not one-on-one. That doesn't mean you don't meet with somebody to do that. I can appreciate the thought process that's going into it. I guess I don't know. I don't know how much backing we would have in terms of code, because we don't specify some of this. What we did in the last report was we just quoted, what Maryland said, what's done at the state level. In regards to the gift to a public figure, the explanation does not address that. I still feel that is not a campaign. That you have to be careful with giving gifts, and I think it would behoove them to take that out of their campaign funds.
Debbie, please, because
Yes. So, what jumps out is that nobody else is doing this. And Eileen, you've been doing this for years, and it sounds like this may be unusual for you as well. And of course, for Keanu and myself, the reports we've reviewed so far, nobody else, I'm sure other aldermen are doing some of these things, but we don't see them putting it on their financial report. So, if this is sanctioned, then, we're going to get it. I would think others would do it too. But I think the key is it, like you've said a couple times, is it campaign related, or is it your job related, as an alderman? And they do have benefits that way too, that they can use for lunches and things. And plus, if they're meeting with constituents, you would think they'd meet in the ward and not outside the ward.
Because 12 are outside of the ward and 17 are. 17,
No, only one was in the ward.
It says 12 are outside, with the exception of one of those 12. With the exception of one, the remaining 17 are not.
Right. There was 29 listed. And what I noticed, the change between this report and the previous report, was the ones that took place at a restaurant. Didn't say who they were with. It could have been with a Ward 1 resident, but it was done in Ward 3. So what happened was they took out all of with the exception of one, they took out any lunches that were done outside of Ward 1. But again, it's not where the lunch occurred. It's with who it occurs with and why it's occurring. So to answer your question, Debbie, I believe that this Alderman Tierney in the past years has had a couple, and I believe they've it hasn't really been addressed. In last year's, there were some listed, and this group, the board did question it. I forget what the explanation was, but it was quite a few. I think what hit our radar this time was the number, 29 individual instances. And so even though some of them have been taken out, I mean, again, there's still 17 to consider.
And because what it seems like to me as well, especially with you sharing this, Eileen, is if you submit 29 of the same and you say, okay, after being told that you're not really in line with what it should be, and so, okay, then I'll take away some and I'll say that this is what it should be for them, but I'll keep those there. That's not consistency.
Right. So I don't know, Ashley, what your thoughts might be in terms of, I mean, it's been changed to fundraising, which, if it's truly fundraising for the campaign,
Did she raise money? Does this does it
Right,
show
but
that she got
fundraising
money
usually
from
means
it?
money's coming in, not money
Yeah,
going
there's no money.
out. So,
Has any money come in? No,
That's what we're
not
trying.
that, not in the off season, not, I don't think she reported much new money, did she? I'll
Anybody.
have to-
So 29 meetings of fundraising, I don't think.
I got 0.
So yeah, actually, if you don't mind asking, answering, Eileen asked if you're able to.
I think it's kind of a gray area, to be honest. And we, as Eileen mentioned, we don't really have anything in our city code that legally says one way or the other on it. I think it's hard, especially for a sitting council person, because like if it was someone who was running and they didn't have a seat on the council, you could very easily say that this is fundraising. But because she is in her position and has been in her position with the city council for a while now, it makes it murkier, because the reality is it could be fundraising, but it could just, as Eileen pointed out, be her doing stuff related to her role. So I feel like while her explanation maybe gets you kind of like halfway there, but you kind of need more of an explanation of like who they're meeting with to some extent. And the use of the word constituents is probably not the best choice, because that would imply her current job. And were there any successful, if it's fundraising, was there any success in raising funds, I guess. So I feel like if she's going to push it as she really wants to be fundraising, I think she needs to give us a little bit more detail.
I would agree. So yeah, if we can have that in the updated response to her, I think that would be
okay,
that
well,
would be appropriate.
I can,
You're right.
I mean, I agree with what Ashley said, and it also is something that comes up when we talk about campaign fund reports in a few minutes. I mean, I'm happy to talk with the treasurer and just ask for, what would you like me to ask her? What would you like me to say to her?
Well, I'm looking, and Debbie, please feel free to, but I'm looking at a couple of things here. One thought I had is to share, just like we did initially, that, we're still in question based off your response. Will you please provide more information about the constituents that you met with, and share if these were successful fundraisers, since they were supposed to be fundraisers, and if so, please be sure to include this on your report so that we can see where this money was raised, because maybe it was cash, but still, it has to, because how do we know if it was fundraiser if she didn't get any money?
That's not really our purview. And if somebody holds a fundraising party, you don't have to, if there's tickets, you have to qualify that. But if somebody has a fundraising event, they don't put it in the campaign fund report exactly how much was raised. It could be contributions. So I don't want to start asking her that we wouldn't ask for somebody else. That's not necessarily within our purview.
So we're not supposed to be receiving an overview of if you had a fundraiser and you raised $500, I have to report that on your fund report. And it does, I'm not saying
but it's reported per the individual or company that gave it.
Yes, that's so if these are individuals that she met with, or if they are, groups or organizations, what have you, that she met with, and they are fundraisers, there should be a report of the money that she raised from those, right?
But that's making the assumption that she received money after meeting with these people.
Exactly. So that's why we're going to clarify if they were successful. We're going to ask, are they successful? And if they were,
that's not in our code. I mean, that's not something that we do. We don't do that for everybody.
I see. You're saying we don't ask people if your fundraisers were successful.
Yeah.
The issue with this, though, is that she is sharing that they were fundraisers, and she is telling us that if this is a fundraiser,
29 times.
And 20. So if I'm so
it's
the
a
question
fundraising It's a fundraising activity.
Activity.
So that's what it's
I
been
see. So like if it's
changed
a
to,
car
is an-
wash, I'm fundraising
Right, so
for
it's-
a car wash. Okay, I see.
right. So
Restaurants.
it's a different
Lunches.
mechanism that maybe other candidates have used or taken advantage of. But since they've been moved to fundraising, I think that it makes it a little bit grayer to some
Nice.
degree.
And our
This
aldermen
isn't-
can fundraise year round, right, while they're in office, and
They're allowed
they-
to.
Correct.
there's no limits to when you can fundraise,
Right.
right?
I guess the question I would have for her is, with this campaign, was she paying for herself? Are these reimbursing for her meals? Or were they reimbursing for everybody's meal that was there?
From what I remember, and I can look up her form, but I thought they were kind of like in the 17 to
There's
26,
nothing extravagant,
which sounds like just her.
Mm-hmm.
right?
So it sounds like it's not a group. Well, I don't know how many people, but it does seem like
It's one-on-one.
it's
or-
her, but we don't know how many people, and we don't care how many people she's with, but I think she's paying for hers.
Right.
Maybe there were a couple that might have been hired, and I thought, oh, well, she treated someone.
I think if she says that she is covering the cost of the people she's meeting with, that's not fundraising necessarily. So then it gets into the gift area. I agree with you, Debbie. I think they probably are. She's just getting reimbursed for her own expense. But I think that's a question that I think is within our purview to ask.
Yeah, if that's really where, because I agree to that. If our focus is more so as knowing the amounts, if our focus is more so, since they could have been reimbursed to herself, less on the fundraising aspect of it and more so on what was it spent on, of course, then I would agree that the question should be asked.
Okay. So I can clarify what the expense covers, and one could ask the rationale for taking some out, but not taking all of them out. So,
Right.
Yeah,
The
please.
rationale, and
Yes.
that this is unusual. We're trying to wrap our head around it. Nobody else has done this.
right.
And, excuse us for being, having to
Yeah.
ask questions, but she's kind of walking down a new road here, and it's increasing from what she's done in the past. And, we've been candidates, we've been treasurers. I'm certain, we've all been contributors to campaigns, and if I'm giving money to some elected official, I'm not sure I want them to use that money to go to lunch 29 times. We can also buy our own lunch.
Right.
So,
Well, those gives me some information in terms of clarifying.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts about that, Ashley? And again, they're trying to work with us. It's not like an adversarial
Right, yeah.
relationship
That-
here.
That all makes sense. And I feel like it's just one of those ones where this is, as Debbie was saying, it's a new path, and it might be something we want to put into policy. So we're just trying to feel out what she's doing and what we think would be a comfortable thing to, apply broadly to all the candidates.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right. So are you all
And it
comfortable
does
with
make
that?
sense. Yeah, I am. I was going to say, and it does make sense when you say lunch with constituent, that it could be for yourself if you're meeting with one person or,
All right. Well, I'll get that
Yeah,
information
sure.
then. So
yes.
any other questions on this?
You didn't really,
analysis?
I know you kind of were cut off at Friends of Gavin Buckley. I'm not certain if you kind of had to go fast, but I just want to make sure you had enough time there before we.
Yeah, he
ended.
just needs to put in the amended report. I mean, I talked with Stuart Cohen, and I told I answered his question, but he said he already sent it in. And so what he sent in was not compliant with what my recommendations were to him. So they need to amend, it's not a big deal. They just need to explain it. You just can't white it out and pretend it was never there. So it's the reimbursement for the credit card error has been changed into a contribution, which is fine. And what I told him was, resubmit with it back in there and just give an explanation on why the change was made. And then on Schedule 3, he hand wrote the proper headings in, and the total is correct on Schedule 3. But when he put it on the summary sheet, the number was wrong. So on the Schedule 3, it was listed as $811.29, which is correct. But on the summary sheet, it was listed as $611.19. So they need to change the summary sheet. So
Okay.
These are not difficult, as we've all learned, these are not difficult. This is sloppiness.
Yeah.
Not just this. I mean, it's just some of this stuff is just sloppiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do appreciate the service. Continue to work for the people, for the better. Thank you all for
So
representing
just
us.
to cover ourselves on the motion that we accept this report analysis.
Yeah, Debbie had a question, right?
Just one thing. So Eileen, did you make up this chart with the new the latest amendments and what we still need? Did you do this, or Regina? This is the latest.
Yeah, that's what I made up.
Good, because I see you included a few more bullets.
I added a few more things at the top.
And
Wait, you added more camp to the numbers. You added more.
The last one had 4 bullets.
Yeah, now it has
6 bullets because
Yes, I
we're
love it.
trying to teach these candidates and treasurers. We're trying to spell everything out, and I thought this one captured. I thought this was very clear, Eileen. So going forward, when we send these directions out, I mean, these should be included when we send out or put them into our directions for treasurers.
It's on the forms.
Yeah,
It's on
I
the-
know,
It's on
but
the direction. It's
I don't
on the
know.
direction sheet.
being in bullets like this in bold,
It's
Mhm.
on the direction sheet. They just don't look at the direction sheet. And I can appreciate there's some in terms of they changed, they're putting in spreadsheets as opposed to using our forms, which I can appreciate. We can look at trying to change the form a little bit, but I think when we tried it, it's just, if you're going to make up it's interesting to me that the majority of people, when they do a spreadsheet, they put in the same headers that are on our form, and some people don't. And it's the people that don't that we have to go back and say, put the same headers in. So we're getting there. So I think these will be taken care of. And like I said, Fred Payones is pretty much already taken care of. And I think Buckley's will too. And I haven't heard from Brooks for Annapolis, but they should be okay. So the good news is all the others are compliant.
okay, so Regina will send out to them and then they have the 30 days and we'll look
Right.
at it next time or the
Right,
next
so
time.
there's a motion on the table for
there is.
accepting.
Yeah.
accepting this.
Is
Second,
there a second? Okay, all in
Second.
favor of that?
Aye.
aye,
Yeah, so,
thank you.
Okay. yes. So we're now going to move forward to the focus / priorities leading up to the 2025 elections, and focus priorities / priorities leading following the task force's report / recommendations in the 2025 elections. So we can start with that.
Okay. So
So-
at our last meeting, you all asked me to go ahead and follow up on some research on some of the things that we have been discussing. So I pulled a number of this information, both from the state of Maryland, but also looking at Rockville and Frederick, which are pretty close to what we're doing, because there's not a whole lot of places that still are running their own, running with their own code. Most of them are aligned with the state, such as Hagerstown. I did have an opportunity to meet with Regina and Cynthia, who is the new legislative assistant, and she's offered to help check on some, some wording on some things in terms of legislation. In talking with them, and Ashley, you may have a comment on this. The thought was to kind of prioritize anything that had to do with any sort of fee changes or any sort of budgetary changes, because the budget is going to be getting discussed in the next few months. So that really has to do mostly with campaign fundraising. So, Yana, do you want me just to go through these? We'll do them.
I'm sure we can go through. I was gonna, yeah, we can go through if you can share each of them. Starting at the
fund reports, we've been talking about enforcement and penalties. And so, again, this is kind of from what I've called and from what I think we've been talking about, but certainly is open for discussion, is to shorten the time for amended reports to be filed in an election year from 30 days notice to 15 days. We could do that in a non-election year too, but my concern is in an election year, these reports start coming quickly. Debbie can attest to that. So what happens is you could have your initial report submitted, reviewed, and found to have errors, but in the meantime, second report has already been submitted, which means it's based on the first report, which is an error, and it's just the errors just get all the way through.
Embedded, yeah.
And so 30 days is just not realistic in an election year when you have these reports coming in very quickly. It is pretty consistent with other jurisdictions, other municipalities, to have a shorter limit. So I would propose that we consider shortening at least during the election year, but we may want to consider also shortening it, just make it for any reports need to be submitted within 30 days. We also talked about adding a late penalty for amended reports, because there are other municipalities that do that. There's one municipality, I can't remember off the top of my head. If it's late, it's an automatic $400. Some of the others are higher, some are lower. But I think if we consider putting in a late penalty for amended reports, it might help us get them in on a more timely basis. And then also another thing that I did notice in looking at some of the other codes was that there are some that include a provision and process for waiving a late fee, which we don't have in our code, which might address your concern, Debbie, with.
Yeah, I like that idea.
So so that's kind of the research that I did based on what our discussions have been.
So this would just also be included in a code change for these three. Well, four.
Four, yeah.
Now, but there's the suggestion for a late penalty. Of course, when the time comes, we would decide that. But will we just align with the state on that? I know that was one of the recommendations, to align with the state's code on many of the campaign.
Well, if we're going to align with the state code, I mean, overall, that's a bigger question that we probably can't answer for this election. I think, when you're making a change like this, try to make the least change. So, I mean, I'm fine with keeping the numbers for the late fee the same. It's just, keep it the same. So in an election year, it's $20 a day for a maximum of 500, or in a non-election year, it's $10 for a maximum of 250. I mean, we can change it, but I mean, that's just, you can also keep it the same.
And I think by shortening the days, it would cause for that to even come out sooner for any late persons anyway. So I think the effect would be there enough where we wouldn't have to
Well, we'd be
Um,
shortening it, but we'd also be assessing a late fee. We don't assess a late fee
Exactly.
for a late amended report now.
Yeah, so that's double trouble because
Yeah.
you're shortening it and you're penalizing.
Right.
Well, let's say that we all agree on this. This would be a recommendation then to include this update in the code. We would just have to look at
Yeah.
the code and see whether it include this.
Yeah, so I don't
Yes.
really agree. I mean, running for office and being a treasurer is, you know, a voluntary, and usually busy people are the ones who are leaders and step up. You know, I would, you know, I hate to penalize somebody willing to serve, whether as a candidate or treasurer, especially with money, you know, that they need, whether it comes out of their campaign or whether it's out of their pocket. I don't mind shortening the time frame because like Eileen said, we've got work to do that bundles, you know, that goes on top of each other. It's during a campaign cycle. So that can be done. Of course, we've got to work faster too. You know, if they're going to be faster, we have to be faster.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Yeah. So there's an effect there. And then the money, I mean, I would want to lower the fees. Yeah, unfortunately, it just seems like people aren't just paying attention. And I don't know if we need to maybe have a little class, you know, give them.
Don't say anything like that, Debbie, because Eileen has said multiple times that there is many of resources provided.
I know.
It's
I know.
I think
But-
we have to keep it just objective.
Some
I
people
hear
are
what you're
audio
saying,
learners.
But you know, so your point of, you know, shortening it does put more pressure on us, and it also puts pressure on Regina
Yeah.
for putting it out there. But again, I'm coming from the standpoint too, that the public deserves to be able to have reports of, you know, what's going on in real time.
Right.
Because many of them are going to make decisions. I mean, people do look to see who's getting money from who. And these reports need to be as accurate as possible. And especially during, you know, right before an election, I think we owe it to the voters to have these things reviewed on a timely basis and as accurate as possible.
Now, for new campaigns or even those who have been running for previous elections, I know that the first 30 days or so, or whatever the report is doing when you first start a campaign, you may not be able to get the first one in time, or you may say, "Oh, okay, I'm still learning. Let me try." So I think a 30-day for the first one, and I'm not saying we divide it up and not make it consistent all the way around, but I'm just, you know, talking it through, and we are too. The first one maybe I can understand that, though. After getting into the campaign and rolling, I think the 15.
We're talking about amended reports. We're not talking about
amended
the first
reports.
report. Amended
So-
reports. So you want the first amended report? See, the problem is if your first amended report is wrong
Mm-hmm.
or not correct, then the rest of them are all going to be off.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
Because you've
I
already
shouldn't say that.
submitted.
There's
you know?
there's a high potential that they're gonna be wrong because you're basing it on information that hasn't been corrected.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. So
So the first report, the initial report, you know, you get that in, and yeah, you still have to get your amended report in by 15 days. Then that's just the election year. We don't have to do it in non-election years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, I put that in to see if you want to consider that.
no, we should consider. Now, say we all agree, as I mentioned, because I don't think there's any more conversation needed for it, because for that specifically, because we all, I think, in terms of speed, readiness, preparation, all these things, it makes sense to allow for the campaigns to get a notice. 15 days were required, and then the fees kick in, pushes them, and hopefully also allows for less work on our part. So if we were to move on this, are we just going to then see about changing the code? I mean, this
Well, that's what we're talking about.
this would
So
be
we're talking
included
about
in
if
our
we want
ask
to
of
move.
the city council.
Okay,
Yes.
so the process is that we decide that we want to propose this for legislation. Ashley and Cynthia will work with Regina and put together, the legislation. Then the legislation would go to the city council. Then there'd also be public hearings. It would go through that whole process. So if we decide tonight, we want to take these, whichever ones we want to take, or if we
Right.
want to add anything, then we would give that to Cynthia and say,
To compile
can you
into
put
one.
this in terms of legislation?
Okay, so what I was thinking then over here is checking off every one that we would agree to include in one piece of legislation. I'm checking those off. So I think the shorten of the time, Debbie, it sounds like you would agree on that with what Eileen, and I too agree that, especially just to make it easier. I'm on both sides on this, but I think to make it easier for the board, especially with members currently, we should look as that being included in the piece of legislation. So I'm gonna,
as long as we meet more, we'll have to probably meet quicker, and then Regina would have to, be quicker too.
Once we get into the first few months before the election, we'll be meeting pretty much every other week,
Okay.
if not weekly sometimes. So, and that's what a lot of times we'll have to do if we go in. We'll do the reports then. We'll just do them, because you'll find that as we get closer, we have to go up to the county board to do certain public demonstrations and public checks and things like that. So that's always a good opportunity to do some of this. So if it's helpful, I can look at what the time frame would be. And get
That's okay. I mean, I'll go along with it, Kiana, then. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll have the first bullet. The second one, consider shortening. I think, as for a start, at least, I think it'd be fine if we just did it for the election years, as long as that's okay with everyone else. I think for a start, we can do that. So I'm gonna skip that one. And then the late penalty, I think we all have agreed on that. I know that'll make some differences. Added that late, so I'm gonna. It's a check for me.
Yeah.
Do you want to make the late fee the same as what we're doing now for the?
Yeah,
initial
I would
report?
agree to what you had said, Eileen. If that's all right with Debbie, I think that makes sense, at least to keep it where it is now and then shift, because it is less than the state, or I mean, it's not as harsh.
I don't think it's different with the state.
I mean, let me look this up to confirm. Debbie, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I would like to, if we're going to talk about how the penalties are paid, I would like to suggest that we follow state law, and that late fees, campaign filing late fees must be paid with campaign funds, and if not enough there, then personal funds.
Okay, so to allow for campaign funds to be used.
Yes.
I know that was a question at first. Eileen, how do you feel about that? Because
I prefer to keep it as it is, but I am willing to consider including a provision for people to ask for it to be waived.
Okay, versus it being.
I feel,
Okay, I can go along with that.
I mean, I understand that state law, but there's also other municipalities that don't do that. It comes out of, and I think when we're the state's dealing in a much larger population. So I was trying to think doing the waiver might, I was kind of thinking of you, Debbie, when I saw that.
No, I appreciate that. And I can go with that.
Okay.
Number 4 there.
Okay, so we can check off that. At least for me, I'm going to make this check here to consider including a provision in process for waiving a late fee. Though the late fee, okay, and we'll be with that. Then Eileen, we'd be keeping the late fee the same, though. It does say it's up to $1,000 at the state level.
No, we're just keeping it for, again, trying to keep it consistent with what we're doing. And when you get into the state you'll find at the municipal level, you're gonna have different limits.
Yeah, I
So-
think it's $500 per report owed. It said the maximum late fee is $10 a day.
Right, and
For a
we don't go
limited
that
time,
high,
right?
or yeah,
Yeah.
well, so.
I know.
All right, so if
Okay,
I'm hearing
great.
correctly, I'll move that we shorten the time for amended reports to be filed in an election year from 30 days notice to 15 days. We will add a late penalty for amended reports similar to the filing of initial reports, meaning that it will be $10 a day for a maximum of $250 in non-election years, but in election years, it would be $20 a day for a maximum of $500.
Which I think, okay.
And then we will include a provision and process for waiving a late fee.
All right, is there a second for those? Will that motion that include all three of these
I
points?
second.
All right, all in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye. Now this will come back to us. So this isn't a
Sure.
final if we still have to look at the particulars. But I can
Okay,
give this to
let's move on.
Cynthia.
Okay, and we could just move on forward, and we would. This is a running checklist, correct? If we believe something else, we can include that in that full piece of legislation, Eileen.
Right.
Okay,
So,
great. So yeah, let's
well,
go. To the
the
next.
pieces that it's not going to be one big piece of legislation. There'll be different components. But the campaign fund reports is the only one that I have listed that involves fees,
The budget.
Mhm.
Yeah.
the budget. So that has priority.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
They will, Keanu, they'll run
Yes.
probably simultaneously to some effects or in parallel, but you don't want to lump them all in one.
Just in
Because
case, yeah,
sometimes
right.
if they don't like something, it'll hold up all of
Mhm.
it.
Thank
So
you,
it's
Ashley.
sometimes better to break it out a little bit.
I love that. Yeah, I can agree to that. All right, Eileen. Fair election practices. We have closure of campaign. Mhm.
So fair election practices, the closure of candidate campaign reports, and this somewhat goes with the campaign fund reports, has been questionable too. So I looked into how other places closed their campaign fund, or they closed their campaign committees. So we have some in there. I mean, really, all we talk about is, you submit a final report, but it doesn't really, we don't get into when it needs to be done or who's a candidate and who isn't, and that has come up in the past. So this was just saying, disposition of surplus funds. We've talked about adding the ability for a candidate to contribute to a nonprofit, which is consistent with the state. The state allows a number of different options, but the most general one is and I put it in quotes, include a charitable organization registered or exempt from registration under the Maryland Charitable Solicitation Act. There's lots of different ways you can decide. You could say it has to be a 501c3, or we could use the state language. I think one thing to discuss is, do we want to limit it to organizations that are within the city of Annapolis or allow them to do it within the state of Maryland?
Or even Anne Arundel County, if we want to be kind of focused on our area.
Correct.
I think that's a great question there. Okay.
Yeah, I love the idea. I really think it's needed, especially as we move towards, or if we move towards nonpartisan elections, to not be restricted to giving to your central committee or to the city coffers is huge. And my hope is that it would stay locally in Annapolis. We have plenty of groups here, and we are, staying in our footprint to allow for nonprofits, 50c3 registered nonprofits that function for our residents, or that they don't actually maybe have to be located, their headquarters or whatever in the city of Annapolis, but as long as they serve.
Well, that can get a little dicey because you
Well,
can
then
have a
we'll go.
county
I mean, we could go
organization.
with the city of Annapolis. I'd prefer to keep it really local.
Okay. I would agree.
I agree with you also. I think also stipulating about charitable organizations will have some relevance later when we talk about campaign contributions to groups, because I think, sometimes campaigns contribute to groups that are not necessarily 501c3s. They're still community groups, but that may have relevance later.
Okay.
And I did pull up where the state allows for the surplus funds, and it says here that they are allowed to pay to the Central Committee, a slate. It allows them to pay to the local board of education. It allows for a recognized nonprofit that provides services or funds for the benefit of pupils and teachers, to a charitable organization registered or exempt from registration under the Maryland Charitable Solicitations Act. They could be paid to a fair campaign financing fund or paid to any public or private institution of higher education and state. Wow,
I like the first bullet too. Give it back to the return to sender.
Right. Okay. Well, Eileen and Debbie, do we want to just be specific to what is listed here, or do we want to include any of these from this listing? Because I think this is an overview, which gives us kind of the option to pull what we think would work best for our Annapolis residents and persons who decide to run.
I was pulling this one. I pulled that one based on what we had been
talking about. Yeah, right.
What had we been discussing? I think that saying a 501c3 or a Maryland Charitable Solicitation Act gives us a pretty broad, I would assume boards of, you could, again, a board of education is going to go to the county. It's not going to go to the city.
Right.
So I'm in favor of keeping it local, keeping it simple.
Yeah.
So how do we track? So they say, so right now we can track when money is given back. We can track the two committees and we can track the city coffers. We can track that the money was received and the two committees report the money. But if we allow them to give it back to the sender, or, to nonprofits or anyone else, then do we need to track that they actually did that?
Wouldn't it be on the campaign fund, their final campaign fund reports, which shows the release?
They would say it was given,
but they have to say
how do we know it was received?
We can request it. I mean, we can audit. Yeah. We can always request documentation that it's been done.
It's just more work, to go to the receipt, to the sender. Did you really get that money back? And,
well, but you can ask the campaign for the check or for the documentation that they sent it.
And isn't it required if you can't? It may not be required, but it may be the best thing to do when you are closing your account. You show the final amount. If it was a check, you would, as you just mentioned, Eileen, you would send a copy of that check to show where it went and how much it was, to show that your campaign account was closed. Well, so I don't think there's a concern there.
Campaigns are supposed to keep copies of all of this anyway. It's up to us if we want to say we want to show you. We want to see it. So,
well, if we are okay with this, I am. Just so you know, I do agree with this. The disposition of surplus funds. I know it was something that I supported in the beginning. So I say it is a check for me if you all would be okay with that. The closure of the campaign committee and
without adding anything else, just the nonprofit local, not adding give it back to the sender or to Board of Ed. I don't want Board of Ed.
Again, I think we keep it simple and keep it to the city of Annapolis.
Yeah, city.
I'm uncomfortable with giving it back to contributors because I don't know how that creates a whole other process.
Family member, things like that.
Okay, so who gets it? And
it's awkward to track. Okay,
but this is very straightforward. So I say
I'm good.
Okay, I'll check that one off. Thanks, Debbie.
All right. Do you want as part of the process that they provide documentation?
That would be, I think that would help with some of the question here. You just would have to provide documentation, just like if it's a pack, just like if it's a pack, that provide documentation to confirm it's a real pack. So I think that would be good.
Well, Okay, I'm talking about documentation of the gift.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yeah, I'm saying, yeah.
But
mhm.
then also documentation of the status.
Yes, please, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And I think a lot of nonprofits would be appreciative of this. I think it would really encourage community building and relationship building, and just reaching out to some of these nonprofits who are struggling, but they've been able to build some connections. So I'm really happy to see this. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so we may need to. All right, let's make this a separate motion. All right, so I move that we add the additional option of giving money to a registered 501c3 located in the city of Annapolis.
Second.
To the disposition of surplus funds in closing a campaign. We can also consider using the terminology include a charitable organization registered or exempt from registration under the Maryland Charitable Solicitation Act. And we will also, as part of the process, request documentation of that status and also documentation that the gift has been made.
Yeah,
Okay.
I second that.
Okay.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so then, and again, I know it's getting late. We don't have to do all of these tonight, but
Right.
all right, so the other thing to consider is identify when a candidate campaign committee must close and file a final report. And I'm just putting this in because it came up in in my research. And Ashley, I don't know if you have a comment about that, because we have talked a little bit before in terms of when are these things done with? And the state says 8 years after the last election the candidate ran in. Another citation I found was in Frederick. They can continue it in perpetuity. It may be a non-issue, but I just put it in because it has come up.
I think this does, because it was a part of the question with one of the former persons, not to call the person out, but was it maybe Fred Payne? I know that was one of the questions that was asked during that time.
His issue, and again, I think if by taking care of the disposition of surplus funds, it may help take care of it, because in his case, he has quite a bit of money. But he'd like, I think he would respond to an option to close his account, close it. So
okay.
I'm not sure it's an issue. Like I said, I just included it because it showed up when I was researching this.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's that it's not a priority. I don't think it's that important. And some people just might not know for a while. And so I don't know if we'd want to go 8 years, 10 years, 15 years, but then someone's got to track that too. Right. So I'm all for, the less administration, the better. It's just less to track and contact them and say, well, what are you really doing? Well, I'm waiting for my kids to, leave home, and then I'm going to run again. And so, yeah,
maybe we see how the disposition works, and if that helps in any way, because it's not really, as we said, it's not a major. Not many persons are here holding on to campaign accounts for all these years. So maybe we just come back to that one, just to, in light of time and everything.
And then the next, okay, so I agree, we skip it. So the next one had, we've had discussions about when a campaign is actually closed, but we don't really have anything in code. And again, I'm not saying we have to put all kinds of things in, but we've not really talked about, or at least in my recollection, and Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, that we've talked about what to do if we've talked about late fees when they're owed in terms of municipal infractions, but we've not talked about the situation where there might be a negative balance or loans that are outstanding and how to handle that. And again, it may be something that we don't really need to deal with right now, and it may be that we just go with what the state does down the road, but I thought I would mention it since it's here. The other point that comes up is that some codes in other municipalities state that the board actually gives official confirmation to a campaign that it's closed, and we don't necessarily do that. And again, we may feel that we don't have to, or just by accepting the final report, that's enough. So again, I just included it because it came up.
Right. Now, is this the piece that we questioned too of what actually would a candidate be defined as? This wouldn't be touching on that specifically. It'd just be talking about whether or not your campaign committee is closed or not.
Yeah, it's the candidate campaign committee, but I mean, it's supporting a candidate, so you're a candidate.
Okay, so this would specify then that you are considered a candidate, because I know that was a question too.
Right. So for
You are-
instance, if you have a campaign committee and you want to close it, but you have an amended report that's outstanding,
Right.
you're still a candidate.
Right.
You're not, so that can preclude you from other opportunities. So this just puts it a little bit more into,
Right.
just states it a little more clearly.
Right.
But it also brings
Yeah.
up, it also
It would be
brings up
great if we
other
could
things
set
such as
that.
negative balances. What do you do if
Right,
somebody owes money?
And I think we should specify that for persons, maybe not. And this, maybe if we could also specify that you would be considered a candidate, because I think the difference is people associate your committee is one thing because it's just where my money lie. It's open. I got money all up in. And the other piece is, am I still running for office, or am I still pursuing that as a candidate? So it would be good if we do specify whether it's definitions and terms part, or whether it's there that a candidate campaign committee, which we're considering you to also still be, you are considered still a candidate, may not be officially closed if according to the board's records, blah 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 blah. So
But I think that's already somewhat, I mean, if you have, and Ashley, jump in here, if you have an open campaign committee, you're a candidate. I mean, we could,
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be common sense, but I'm okay, honestly, with Keanu's suggestion of including a one sentence that just expressly says it. Because I feel like some people would, I don't have any examples off the top of my head, but I feel like there have been in the past people who exploit that variation in it.
Okay.
To say that they're not a candidate when they are. So, I mean, it's your guys' call, but from a legal perspective, I'm always for more clarity, especially if it can be done in like a one sentence thing.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying include a statement that if a person has an open candidate campaign committee, they are a candidate.
Yeah, they are still considered a candidate. Yes, and I will put that as a check if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah.
What do you mean a check?
I've been highlighting and checking off on my paper which
Oh.
ones we should include as a motion to have.
So you're gonna make an official motion on that in addition to your check?
Well, we could,
or do you want to wait and bundle a few more together?
Yeah, we could.
Well, I was just going to bundle the next one with,
let's do it.
Well, we might as well separate it. We can make a motion. Well, it's not really, I think the motion would be.
It does kind of go with the next bullet though, I would think.
Well, I don't want to, it's hard to get into specific. I mean, we can make a motion to say that we want to include clarity on closing a candidate campaign committee to include how to handle outstanding campaign finance
campaign financing
clients, such as negative balances, outstanding obligations, and to include clarity on the status of a candidate with an open candidate campaign committee. I mean, that's just kind of the overall, that's not the statement for what's going to go in the legislation, but we'd have to tease that out a little bit more.
Okay.
Does that make sense from a motion standpoint?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, is there a second to that motion then?
I'll second.
Okay. All in
It's
favor of
just,
the motion?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, please, question?
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, it's as long as there is us, as long as there is a board, to accept closure, but the campaign has to be cleaned up, to close it out. I mean, we require that anyway, right? We don't, have we
don't
ever
think-
closed? Go ahead.
I mean, from my scan again of code today, we don't get into some of the specifics that I can really tell, but it warrants being looked at again. I know we've had things in the past where a loan had been made to a candidate and the candidate wanted to close their account and they wanted to give the loan back to the person, and we couldn't allow it because it wasn't really stipulated that you could do that. So I don't know. But again, this warrants a little bit more tweaking, but just in the general concept, I think we can move forward with that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Anytime we can clean up, we should. And so it bears putting in there. And do we want to add that so that it'll be accepted? Your closure has to be accepted by the city or by us?
Yeah, by
The board.
The board, yeah.
The board
If
does it.
there's no board, then it would be the city, the county.
Well, if there's no board, that means you're going with the state.
Mhm.
So then it would occur just at a different level.
Okay.
Depending on what we decide to go with in
Yeah.
the future. Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
if you're okay with amending the motion then to include that second bullet, Eileen and Debbie, I think it does make sense to include that there, because first, your campaign's not closed yet because of this. And so, and you're not allowed to close, you're not going to get able to say, okay, it's closed until you get confirmation from the board. I think they kind of do go hand in hand.
I think it helps us just to just clarify that we will give official notification.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is just a broad thing that I can bring back to Cynthia and say, these are components we'd like to start seeing
Mhm.
put in code.
Okay.
And, streamline. Do you want to go ahead and talk about definitions in terms, and again, this
Sure,
needs
let's
more
do it.
clarification.
Before
But we've
we-
talked about trying, contributions and transfers is something.
So we have a motion.
We do
that
have a
you guys
motion.
did- You do have a motion. So do you want to rescind that
Yeah, can we
motion
rescind that motion
or
right quick?
amend it?
I
Where are we going?
second
I
the
thought she
motion.
seconded, but we didn't take a vote.
Yeah,
No,
we
you
did.
did not take a vote.
Okay. So all in favor then of the motion, the original motion, which was about the campaign committee not being officially closed, as well as the candidate piece. Aye. Are you? Please say aye.
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 Aye,
All right.
right.
And then maybe we can just do the next bullet and the remaining ones all together.
Well, I'd like to
unless we need a
propose on the
motion.
next that you all take a look and start considering it rather than us try to tweak it out today. I mean,
Yeah,
there's lots of resources for you all to look it up, but contributions and transfers are outlined in state. Could look at the state and look at some of the others. I think it's helpful for us to give guidance to the campaigns and what type of campaign expenditures are acceptable, what are prohibited, and then clarify personal or official donations and expenditures, and also giveaway items. Because the need for clarification has come up in the last election in terms of what campaigns can give to. Are we going, for instance, are we going to say it's okay for a candidate to give $500 to pay for the hamburgers and hot dogs at an event, at a community event? Not a campaign event, but a community event. how do we, how do we want to consider, sometimes it's a gray line or fuzzy line between, like, if someone is an alderwoman or an alderman giving money, is that a campaign or is it part of their constituency? So those are the things that need a little bit more explanation, but I included it here to start getting into the nitty gritty. So that could be something for a subsequent discussion.
So I guess we could put Alderman Tierney's lunches and gifts. I mean, that would go in here too. Like,
Well,
how
in
do
a
we
broad sense, I mean,
Yeah.
it's providing
more
providing guidance.
guidance on those kind of things?
Right. So I would ask that the two of you maybe take a look at the state code and maybe go ahead and look at some of the others and see and look at current code and see how things could perhaps be clarified.
Okay.
Okay, I'll circle. We're talking about for campaign contributions versus transfers.
Well,
And the campaign
contributions versus
expenditure.
transfers is
The
pretty
whole
straightforward.
section, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
That
all
that's
of those.
already in state, and that's just helpful for them. That's just a definition. One of the things we don't have is the definitions. And there was some discussion between Regina and Cynthia about whether we could put definitions in or not.
We do have I think they're terms.
Yeah, but I think they're not
But it's just
consistent.
not definite. Yeah,
There's
they're
something
not.
with them, but again, this is just really definitions in terms if we want to look into that. Okay.
Okay.
If we have time, maybe we could do the ballot question real quick and then maybe save the
Sure.
rest later.
Yeah, before we do that, where did we end off with the state that a committee is not officially closed? Because we didn't amend that first motion for the bullet before it.
What do we
so
need to amend it for?
I remember when we were questioning whether we would include that part in it, we just ended up just moving
Oh, the
forward on
last
original
bullet.
motion. So that last
No,
bullet.
I
on
included
state-
it in the motion.
Okay, okay. I'm just making sure because Ashley did mention that the
All right, well, we can,
original
I thought I
motion was on the-
included it, so we can, all right, I'll make a motion that we include in the process that a committee is not officially closed until the responsible parties receive confirmation from the Board of Supervisors of Elections.
Okay, is there a
Second.
second on that? Okay,
I'll
all in
second.
favor?
Aye.
One favor.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to the ballot questions.
All right, so we can skip through that and then ballot question. Again, Cynthia said that she'd be willing to look and see what's other legislative language has been used in other places to create a clearer process and procedure. So we were looking at really just redoing that whole section of the current code. In looking for the number of signatures, I was pretty surprised to find only one area that even refers to it, and that was Rockville, and they call it advisory referenda. And their number needed is equal in number to at least 30% of the average number of ballots cast in the last 3 city elections, rounded up to the nearest multiple of 50.
Wow.
So I did that calculation for the city of Annapolis, and it came out to 8,050.
It was around the amount that was already said anyway.
Mm-hmm. So I take that back. So it's 30% of that. So I should have looked at that. I don't know where my
30% of 850.
Number of ballots cast.
So, yeah,
And
so
only
it's like 30% of
20%.
that.
Yeah, only 20% usually cast a municipal ballot.
Well, in the past 3 elections, the turnout
That's
is going
2,000.
up. So
Has
Wait,
been
so
more.
you're saying 30% of 8,050?
the
That's
average
2,000.
number of ballots cast in the last 3 city elections is 8,050. And so
Okay.
it's 30% of that, I think. I'll do the math
30%
again, but
is
it's around
2,000.
that.
Okay, because the 30% of that number, 8,050, is 2,415.
Right, I think I have my numbers wrong, so I'll check that again. But just gives you an idea. That's, I think, a little complex. The state does 10% of the votes cast for governor in the affected jurisdiction in the preceding election. And so I couldn't find the number for just the city. but the countywide vote cast was 38,633. So, I mean, we can always get that number if we wanted to go that way. They recommend that the petition be signed by at least 20 to 30% more voters than the number required, since
It's true.
many will be invalid. So there's really no hard and fast number. Cynthia may be able to come up with some additional ones. I think the big thing is to try to clarify in looking at this, do we want to base the number on voters? Or do we want to, on registered voters, or do we want to base it on
Ballots.
ballots?
Yeah.
Well, I say whichever one is least. At least for me, I think we
Yeah,
don't
like-
want to make this too complicated for the voters themselves, or the constituents, or even residents themselves to put this forward.
Well, on
Though
the
at the
other
same
hand, you
time,
don't
we
want to
do
make
wanna
it
be
too
creative.
easy
Yeah,
either.
exactly. On the other side, we do want to
Um,
be, cognizant of that.
I meant to check. It wasn't clear to me what the county does. But again, that can wait, and I can ask Cynthia if she can find some additional suggestions for that.
I mean, if we did 20% of registered voters in the city has what,
It's about
26,000?
20, it's almost 30 now. It's 29 something.
Okay, so say 30, 20% would be 6,000.
Thousand.
And so that's similar. I mean, we're talking 8, we're talking 6, we're talking 2. I agree with Keanu. We want it to be possible, but I agree with, with also not making it so that every whim, any and everything is going to be, popping up. So yeah, if we want to table this, that's fine.
Mhm.
But we want that happy medium with the least angst,
Yeah,
and making
yeah,
it clear.
especially-
And like that Rockville just is not clear enough. I mean, just right now, I would be leaning towards a percentage of the registered voters at that time. I don't know.
Let's just say we need some more research. We need
Yeah,
to look it up a
do
little
that.
bit more.
I started. I think that
Yeah.
we should definitely come back to it, but
The other questions to think about in ballot questions is that we've talked about before, is adding to code that city council can put a question on the ballot. And that's another gray area to look into a little bit more.
now that you say that, and us talking about the people being able to also decide, it's very interesting to know, because we did talk about a city councilman and the type of things that could go on, or be kind of convoluted, or the kind of dealings that could happen upon being a city council member being able to do this. Though I'm interested to know what a process could be for a city council person to that'd be required for this to even move forward on a ballot, that people support it versus the city council people support it. There's too much. There's too much going on there. Yeah,
Well,
and
it's
I'm
just
just trying to. I think with a
It's
city
just
council,
another avenue for putting a question on the ballot.
yeah, I think
It can be done by a citizen group, or it can be done by the city council.
Now, would the city council person, I think where the part didn't specify what I'm saying is, would themselves be able to just say, okay, today I'm going to put forward a ballot question, or would they have to receive a certain constituency coming forth to say, hey, we would like to get your support to put forward a ballot question? I think that's where that issue lies, is that specification. For me, at least. I'm not certain about you
Well,
all.
I mean,
but
a
wanna
city
make sure
council
that
would be a
people
city
have
council
their-
vote. It's not like one city council member can do it. They'd have to have it passed by the majority of the city council.
Sure, but they have more. They're getting more of a platform to present that ballot question. and we would be able to see that ballot question, and people would start to hear about it, and they would start to gauge some interest, versus a constituent or resident starting from maybe they're in their house and they're just saying, what, we should get a ballot question, and so they have to go out and then start getting all these signatures in order to even present this for.
All right, I'm unclear, Keanu. So are you for a city council initiative or against it?
So I'm just speaking for conversation, to make it as fair as possible for the persons who are not elected currently, like a constituent resident, to be able to have the fair treatment, for them to have the same access.
If you're a citizen and you want to create a petition, you can do that, but you have to get a certain number of signatures, and you have to have it then those signatures certified. I mean, there's a process in the code. So, I mean, that's already there. It's just a question of how many signatures you need.
Right. I think we're talking about, or he's talking about, can the city council as a body, and we've asked this question ourselves, can the city council as a body put a question on the ballot? And to that point, if they can, then what I would do, Keanu, instead of doing a petition among my peers, I would go and lobby the city council.
To be able to
I only need 9 people. I only need 5 people. I only need to lobby 5 people on my side to just, to get a question on the ballot, which is a lot easier than 5,000 signatures.
Right. Well, you also could make stipulations that, it's only charter amendments can be done that way. You also could say that in terms of the majority, that it's not a quorum majority, but it's
super majority,
2/3
majority. So it also has to be.
Yes. I do like that a little bit more.
Not 5.
Okay. I kind of like that a little more, though. Thank you, Debbie. I think, and Eileen, I think it was to make sure that the person weren't receiving more pressure than a city council person would, because they have the platform to just bring it forth to only 8 other members. Whereas me, I'm speaking generally, by the way, as a constituent resident, would have to go and find all thousands of people to do this, to then present.
But that's the beauty of it, is that if you can't get your county council to do it, then you can do it.
We right now, our council can't do it right now, right?
Correct. Ashley, do you want to comment on that at all, in terms of what you had looked into as far as why? I mean, it's not clear where other municipalities, Hagerstown did it, but it's not clear where it was in their code. I think they just passed it so that said that they could do it, and then they did it, but I don't know that.
Yeah, it's one of those issues that's not very clear anywhere. Even when you're looking to the state for guidance, it's still not super clear, and you got to bounce around between a bunch of different sections. So it's just my feeling from a legal standpoint is, if you don't have the express authority to do something, then you can't presume you have it. So we need to, in order for city council to do it, you would need to have some language that indicates they can do it, and nothing that I've found has even come close to that language. So then the legal presumption is, if you don't find something that expressly gives you the authority, then they don't have it. You don't presume, you just don't assume they have it just because they would work. So our position as city council doesn't have it right now, and there's nothing in either our laws or even comparable laws or state laws that would allow it at this point.
Okay.
And Ashley, do you know if, I think at the county level, they can only initiate certain things like a charter amendment?
Yeah, I mean, that's all governed by state law. So state law does allow certain things, again, and you have to look at several different sections of state law. They do allow certain things to happen. And that's why I'm saying, because there is no express language for us, the implication is that we don't have it, because there is state law provisions that says in certain scenarios you can do it. but it's not across the board and it's not for everyone. So
Right.
I think if we want to do it, I think we could pass something to do it, but we probably need something that clearly says city council can do it, and these are the circumstances they can do it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there could be some guardrails put up there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The other thing to consider is whether it's a citizen initiative or a city council initiative, is would the result be binding or non-binding? And then another issue to consider is whether a special election could be held for just a ballot question.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna leave that there. Okay. Well, with the binding or non-binding, do you mind just spending a little to share what you mean by that?
Well, binding versus non-binding is if, let's say, there's a ballot question that says we want nonpartisan elections.
Mm-hmm.
Binding means we are going to have nonpartisan elections.
If it
Non-binding
passes.
means the ballot question initiative shows that the majority of people do not want nonpartisan elections,
Right.
but that's not binding. It means you still could do it. It's just,
It
I mean,
would require
sometimes
the
ballot
process
questions
of
are
the
also
city
used to gauge interest or to gauge an
Exactly.
understanding.
Right.
And
Yeah, I
again,
see.
Now,
going back
could there
to,
be both? Like because that's a public survey in a way. It sounds more
Right.
so like a survey
well,
than a.
yeah, but I then you get you're setting up a gray area. I mean, you set it as not, my personal thing would be you set it up at non-binding, and then it's up to the city council to decide if they're going to follow through on that.
Make it law or not. Yeah.
Right.
Now the thing is, though, is because I agree, I'm with you on that too. You know, like us on that. Though I also believe that in instances where the people truly want something, and it'll cause for us to now, yet again, we have to rely on the city council persons who aren't doing anything that we're saying. Come on, Charter Review Commission, who aren't doing anything that we've shared, and they won't. You know, there may be swift to one party or not, or whether they just don't agree with it. And so then I have to require their support yet again, versus it being the people now get to make this decision. I think that's what we're looking into doing, giving the
Right.
power to the people in a way, depending on what that question
Well,
is.
Right.
It can, that, you know, it can be brought up again, but if you're running it in an election, you're also going to be running it with new people who are running. So that's part of campaigning. So if there's a ballot question up and somebody says, I'm for nonpartisan, someone says, I'm not for nonpartisan, I mean, that gives people the opportunity to vote right then who they want to get in to see follow up on a ballot question. So, I mean, this is getting into a little bit of minutia. I think it's just, you know, I think you have to be very careful when you start talking about binding initiatives, because there's other ways. So I would recommend at this point, we not, you know, this has been really good discussion, but I think at this point we need additional information, and certainly can ask Cynthia if she would be interested, and Ashley also, in putting some of this together for us to take a closer look at.
Sure, I'm full support of that. Thanks for the suggestion.
Okay. The other things that are on this list, because we still have a couple of other items on the agenda, we have absentee ballot code, which again, give you all a chance to look at this, and at our next meeting, maybe talk a little bit more about basically taking out the absentee ballot code, which is somewhat, which would be consistent with the state, and implementing mail-in ballots. So the option. At no point is anybody saying we're not going to do in person. So take a look at this. Canvas is also something, if you're not acquainted with the current city code on canvassing, to take a look at also, in terms of looking at when ballots can be opened, preparing the canvas and the timeline. So I pointed out a few things that we might want to consider adding to code, or at least just if it doesn't need to be in code, it could be, in other places. And then the process in the canvas for rejecting a ballot. So take a look at at this. And then I had one question for Regina. I don't remember, Ashley, do we have a Canvas challenge form? Do we have our own? I don't remember.
I don't think we have a form.
But we must use the county form, because every time I know we signed something, so I'll ask that. It just was something that when I was looking at in codes in other areas, they called for something Canvas challenge form. Oh,
I
know
don't remember
no,
ever
it's not that.
creating one.
We must
but
use the county because
I'm guessing we
Can't-
use the county.
yeah, the Canvas challenge form is for somebody that's observing the canvas if they want to challenge
Right.
something. But I'm not clear if I'll have to ask about that. I don't recall. Well, we didn't really have much challenges, so I don't recall. Maybe we didn't, maybe I don't remember because we didn't have the need for one. But I'll ask. So this was just kind of my review of the Canvas process that we might want to talk about. Okay, so
Yeah.
maybe.
Well, I
Kiana,
do love
before you-
Yeah, if we want, we can either move forward to the agenda, or if we feel that any of those pieces, such as the absentee ballot code portion, I did read over this before and even tonight again. And I think that portion is pretty straightforward. I mean, I don't have any questions there to it. Maybe we can hold off until the new year, or, December if we decide to do it. But
my thought would be perhaps to wait until December, and one of the things we might want to consider doing is to actually outline that when we talk about in our agenda in terms of focus priorities, because something like that may get some feedback from the general public, and I think it would behoove us to just put it out there.
sure.
So,
I think December is
give you
perfect.
all,
to
I mean,
get more
give
information.
you that in particular to give you all a chance to look at it. I think it's important that you look at the code that we currently have now to understand what we would be taking out, and then look at the process that's proposed by the state to see what would be going in. So,
Okay, I love it. Let's do that then in December. So is that then to move forward in the agenda? Or we just
yeah, I think that's enough. I mean, we've covered a lot
Yeah,
of ground. So the absentee ballot code canvas, and going back to the part on definitions for the campaign fund reports, we could have some more information in December.
Okay, thank you all so much. I love this so much.
You're
So proud of all that. work.
easy to please, Keanu.
No, I just feel like this is progression. I love this reformation. I'm just all for it. So okay. Oh yeah. Okay.
I was just gonna say, Lutherans, we just had our Reformation Sunday with
Hey.
when Martin Luther did his thing.
Oh yes. Okay. That's what changed the
Thinking
time.
of Reformation, yeah, that's what I think of.
All right, well, I'm looking at the next agenda, and that was our resolution, which I didn't realize was there.
Yeah.
You're-
Oh my. Yeah, we did kind of. That's okay. Well, we do have. Then we could just move forward to the officers' bylaws and annual report due January 16th. I think I did work with Regina on the last one on that. So I take it when we chat, we'll just get all the information and I'll put that forward. Did anyone have any thoughts or feedback or anything? I know I make sure that I think the process
it would
was
be good if we got a draft of it before.
I was going to say I think the process is that we'll do it first, and then you all, of course, I want to make sure that have that, get to see it and have the support of you all for it. So I'll be chatting with Regina about that. Oh my, that was the last part of the act. But no, we have meeting. All right, we have meeting.
So Regina, and Mark, maybe you'll want to comment on this. Regina mentioned to me that, in January, there is the option of moving to in-person meetings. However, my understanding is that if you move to in-person meetings, it will not be recorded video. Usually in the past, it's been recorded by voice. So it's something to consider as far as, do we want to go all with in-person meetings? Or do we want to stay on virtual meetings? Or do we want to consider doing something like, January, February are Zoom meetings, and March is an in-person meeting?
That's actually what I'm thinking, Eileen, if that's okay with everyone else.
I'd
But I
rather go
believe
in
that,
person.
I'd love to
I
see y'all
believe,
too, though.
Yeah.
so I
I'm-
believe, well, there's advantages to both. I
Mhm.
mean, you know, when we're doing them by Zoom, they're viewed by a lot more people than
Mhm.
people attending. People
And it's only
generally,
audio.
and if there's a particular option, you know, a particular you know, subject that's being discussed, and certainly the timing of meetings could do that. So when we're talking about, you know, specific things where we want more community input, we can advertise that and maybe encourage more people to attend. But I think that we needed to start making that decision because of scheduling. Is that
Mhm.
correct, Mark?
Yes, so you're right on the we pulled a whole bunch of numbers together a few months ago, showing the statistics of how often meetings are being viewed. I have those numbers I can share with you if you like, but if you concede that point, the other thing is that there's no longer a recording secretary employed by the city to do the audio recordings of all of the meetings, and that is a casualty of COVID, I guess. But the fact that these meetings are open and available to the public, they're live streamed, they can be accessed from anywhere. They're also recorded and left up so that people can rewatch. Some of our boards and commissions find that very helpful. If someone misses a meeting, they
I
can go
love
back and
watching your
rewatch it.
meetings.
And right, and it seems to be clearer than the minutes when minutes are taken or notes are taken. We do have some commissions that are meeting partially or occasionally in person. The Recreation Advisory Board is meeting virtually, I think, 2 or 3 times a year, and the rest of the time they're meeting in person. Where did you all meet before? Was it in council chambers or over at Gorman?
Council chambers.
We've never met. Keanu and
The
I have
previous-
never met yet.
Yeah, well, we had, you know, but the
So
previous.
with
Where did you
council
meet, Eileen?
chambers,
The
council
boards
chambers.
always met in the past in the council chambers.
okay, so with council chambers, then you have the issue of reserving council chambers. So we have the ability right now of last night there were 3 boards and commissions meeting taking place at the same time, virtually. So in the chambers, you need to make sure that it's reserved. There's also security issues now where they have to have a security guard on hand because of some recent events. And then I'm making sure the building is unlocked and accessible to the public and all of those sorts of things. So personally, I think it would be best for everybody to meet occasionally, and then that way you have that touching base that and do give the opportunity to the public to come in, but in those situations it would not be recorded. It technically could be recorded in the council chambers using the same equipment that we use to record the city council meetings and the standing committee meetings. But that again is a budgetary issue that would need to be cleared with the mayor's office.
Yeah, I think in the past they were recorded, but not necessarily transcribed.
Yeah, it was just a tape recorder.
Yeah. So we could still do that.
Well, that tape recorder may not be working anymore. And yeah, so again, it's been a while since that was used. I think it's still there. We'd have to test it and figure out how it works. But who pressed record, Eileen? Was that somebody on the commission?
For
Probably
our
Regina.
board, it was Regina.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then we just had to make sure that all of our mics were on.
right.
Who's
Yeah, that's
taking
the other thing.
minutes
We
tonight?
having to train people to talk into the microphones is important too.
Right.
Right.
Regina will take minutes if she's able to from the recording. Well, if we'll have a meeting, do we have time, Mark, to decide by our meeting, or should we be doing that tonight? Because if we want to meet in person, I think it should be recorded in some way, a shape or form. And if we want to start the new year off fresh, meeting each other, and then possibly shifting back, or if we want to start off doing the virtual and then come in.
Yeah. So I just need to know whether or not we need to reserve a staff person for your meeting from City of Annapolis TV. So if you're planning to definitely meet in person beginning in January or next month, let me know. So that way, if a a lot of rescheduling going on right now with the holidays. So people are trying to move meetings around, and I need to know if we can staff them or not.
Okay.
But if you stick to your schedule and tell me that, you know, we should plan on staffing that meeting for you, then that's no problem at all. You can take your time.
Okay. Right. I'd rather us, if you all agree, I'd rather us be safe to say, okay, let's see what dates are available for us to meet in January or February or March versus
I'd
us
like to,
saying,
I'd like to
yeah,
propose
please.
that we keep our current time.
Yeah.
And if we can go ahead and be scheduled virtually and then get back to Mark and say, okay, we know we can meet in city council
Mhm.
chambers on X, Y, and Z. In the past, it's been a pretty open time, but I'm sure it can fill up. It usually follows, there's usually a work session on the third Thursday of the month. So, but if it's helpful to plug in and get at least that third Thursday of the month virtually, that's, and then switch, does that make sense? Rather than spend more time waiting?
Wait.
I agree. We should keep the third Thursday at 7. That just seems the right thing to do.
Mhm.
Whether it's in person or not can come later.
Right,
So
but if
we'll
we
stick
can get
with
on
the
the
23rd.
schedule for virtual, get on that schedule, so we have that. And then we can go back and say, we've looked at our calendar for the year and we're going to meet live March,
January
June, and
8th.
September.
Yeah, March, for okay.
And then
So
we can,
what we're
I'm sorry.
no, you're fine. So we're saying then December 21st, which is our next scheduled meeting. First off, we'll be able to meet that day, right? I mean, that's not of concern with the holidays because that's the following week is the Christmas holiday. So are we still fine with the 21st virtually? Okay, perfect. So we're set on
Just don't
December now.
schedule.
Okay, so moving forward to January, we're saying January 18th would be our next meeting. That's the third Thursday of the month. And Eileen, were you saying there would be a work session that day? That
We're
evening?
not talking about work sessions. That's a
No,
whole
no,
other.
not for
No, no,
us.
no,
You mean
What
for
I'm
the city
saying is,
council.
we say to Mark tonight, please block us in virtually for every third Thursday
the
of the month at 7:00.
And you're already blocked for 2024 for every third Thursday
Yep.
for a virtual meeting to be staffed by us.
Okay.
So
We-
as much advance, if you decide to meet in person, as much advance notice as you can give me,
Right.
the easier it will be for me to reschedule other
great.
meetings.
Okay.
And in the meantime, we can talk with Regina and find out what the availability of the city council chambers are
hmm
and get
So-
those.
Good point. So Planning Commission, which also meets on the third Thursday,
Mhm.
does meet. It is going in person in council chambers. So council chambers would not be available on that third Thursday.
Okay, and are they going to do it every month?
January 18th, February 15th. Yep, you've got conflicts on
So
all
they're
of
going to
those
be
nights.
live.
That's their plan. Now there's there's some conversations going on in the background for all the same reasons of visibility, accessibility, being able to get a quorum and that sort of thing. So, you know, that could change, but as of now, they have stated that beginning in January, they will be in person.
At
Okay.
what time?
At 7 p.m. on the third Thursday.
So are they already at 7 on the third Thursday?
Yes,
And they've just been meeting Zoom.
up until January, that will change.
Yeah. But prior to meeting virtually, they met on another night because we had that, so. But
Well,
that could also be,
we get not finders keepers, but we have seniority.
well,
we-
that could also be
they- They
that could
can't
be a
just
conversation between the chairs to find out if they're going to be doing what we're doing, and then you just make sure that we're alternating.
go duke
Right.
it out, Keanu. My money's on you,
Listen,
buddy.
you already know what it is. I know you-
I will just
No.
add in that the planning commission generally has very full agendas for
Mhm.
every month.
Yeah.
Like they don't, if you think they're going to have like a light month or take a month off, that's not really how they roll.
hours
Yeah.
of meetings.
My thought was they might go virtual some months too. They'll be
I'm
live
with
all the
Mark. The
time?
last I heard was that they weren't going to do any virtual. I don't know if that
Okay.
fight is going to be won or not, but
Now, what's the other option for where? Because I know you mentioned it's not just the chambers that we could do.
Some people meet, some commissions and boards meet at Pip Moyer Rec Center. Some of them meet at the large conference room on Gorman Street, which is behind City Hall. I don't know of any other locations that are used.
you guys sometimes do meetings when we get closer at Anne Arundel County's facilities.
Right. We've also met up in the large conference room upstairs in City Hall too, on Duke of Gloucester. But again, then it becomes a question of, usually what would happen is Regina would record it on her phone. So it would get recorded.
Okay. Well, so we're set then for all virtuals. Ashley, with your comment, that means that we shouldn't even request that we could switch off a couple of
I don't
days.
think, I don't think Planning Commission is going to switch off, and because
I know how they.
because they so that would be a hard commission to fight against if they tend to go live. The other thing just to keep in mind, which Mark had hinted at, but since you guys used to meet in person, a lot of different security measures have taken place and are going to be implemented. So it's getting tougher to have evening meetings in person because there's a lot more things you have to line up now than what used to have to be lined up. So it's one of those things, like if you're going to do it, it's going to require prep work and planning and coordination with more than what you used to have to do.
All right. Well, who could make their request to them just to ask?
Regina, I think Regina would do it. Regina, well, I mean, you mean to the Planning Commission or just to City Hall generally?
To wherever we can get some space, and the planning commissions included. Who could make
Regina should probably do the initial reach out to see availability and what the procedures are, because she knows from City Council. So because she runs the City Council meetings. So I would have her reach out, and then Planning Commission, it's probably, I mean, I don't know. That's an ongoing discussion with them, so I don't know where it's going to land.
Okay.
Mark, are there any other, if we decided we wanted to be meeting in person sometimes, and we wanted
Could you
to
do
switch
earlier?
Yeah, I was
if
actually
we wanted
thinking.
to switch.
Yeah.
So again, usually there's a city council work session on the third Thursday, which goes from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Trying to squeeze a meeting in between those two as possible, but if you all went late, that could be an issue. The night before Economic Matters Committee usually meets from 6:30 to 8 on Wednesday nights, and Board of Appeals sometimes meets on Wednesday nights. The third Tuesday only has the Maritime Advisory Commission meeting, and they are remaining virtual as far as I know. So if you wanted to move to Tuesdays instead of Thursdays for in-person, that could work.
Which Tuesday is it?
That's the third Tuesday.
So
I would have to switch off sometimes with you guys because they're another one of my boards.
Right.
So I'd
What
have to
about
switch on and
another?
off.
What about another Thursday?
Thursdays are not.
Like
The Annapolis Conservancy Board meets every other month on the second Tuesday, and that's still virtual. The Environmental Committee, Standing Committee, meets from 3 to 5 in the council chambers, so a 7 o'clock meeting in chambers is doable, although Alderman Savage does tend to go long sometimes.
You're talking about on the second Thursday, or you said Tuesday?
Second Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And the third Thursday I know is an HPC meeting, administrative. But that's
the fourth. That's the fourth Thursday.
Fourth.
And those
we have a lot.
Yes, a lot of commissions.
Yeah, there are historic preservation's meeting on the fourth Thursday is usually virtual because it's administrative.
Right.
The Affordable Housing and Community Equity Development Commission, which is a mouthful in itself, they meet on the fourth Thursday from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. virtually.
So
but again, these discussions are beginning to happen of wanting to see about going back in person.
Second or fourth Thursday is an option. for us then.
Doesn't sound like the second is.
Second,
The second Thursday.
second Thursday is good.
Okay.
Assuming that environmental matters committee doesn't go 4 hours.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Well, let's
Or
stick
the
with December.
4th.
Oh.
Okay.
I was going
Yeah.
to say, so we can stick with December, and then possibly, do you all want to kind of request that we do the 4th or second Thursday and a virtual in February or March or something like that?
Well, you
or-
have to talk to Regina to find out what's
Yeah, so can we,
available. So
yeah,
we
so
can
can
talk.
we ask on that?
Yeah, we can't decide tonight because we don't have the information.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
But as
Yeah,
I
I-
said,
Yeah, no, he wanted some information. Yeah, no, he
Oh.
wanted.
So do groups meet in December? Do most committees meet in December, Mark or Ashley?
a lot of them don't, but some of them do.
believe-
Because this meeting is late, right? We, you guys graciously put this meeting back 2 weeks because of Thanksgiving and my travels. So we're already, halfway. We're already 2 weeks later than we normally are.
We still have 3 weeks though. Yeah, we're still in time.
Yeah,
For
so it was
sure.
gonna be a 5 week, there was gonna be 5 weeks between our meetings. And now, because we're 2 weeks late in November, there are still, 3 weeks left. I guess we can do what we need to do. I'm gonna have family here, but I'll just do like Ashley and
I knew
Regina.
it, Debbie.
I'll just have kids running around. And
That's
go on
okay.
mute. I'll just go on mute and no picture and no sound.
Well, I mean, I think the question is do we have business that needs to be addressed in
That too.
December? And the
Yeah.
answer is yes.
Okay, so we have business, so we will meet. I wasn't sure.
We can make it short.
Yeah, and then going forward, if we can stay away from the second, I already have a second Monday and a second Wednesday meetings. So, I mean, I'd prefer to stay in the first, third, or fourth weeks and
Okay.
not the second week, just because I already have 2 meetings that week. But if we go with the second Thursday, I'll just have 3 meetings that week.
Right. Well, I also heard Mark say that the third Tuesday,
Yeah, I could do
also an option, and
I
the
could do
fourth
that.
Thursday and the
fourth,
second
fourth,
Thursday.
yeah, fourth Thursday,
So let's
third
get some-
Tuesday.
Yeah, let's get some information about when these chambers can be open for us, and we can then in December hopefully be able to decide when we want to do it in person and be right and prepared. So Mark, please, hopefully that's enough information for you for now that we're looking into doing. Okay, great, thank you. Wow, what a meeting today. I think we're at the end. We are at the end. If you all don't have anything else to share, Eileen or Debbie, we're here
Yeah, I
to
make a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Second,
No, okay, all in favor.
Hannah's having too much fun.
Blessings, everybody. Good night. Be safe.